Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. This is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio. Good morning. It is 6 o'clock here in the morning, Monday morning, May the 24th, and I am happy to be here. It's a holiday here in Canada, and it's Victoria Day, so I'm off, but I'm up anyway. And I thought, well, I'll just keep on with the schedule and just enjoy the day instead of sleep it away. So I'm glad to be here, and this is a 30-minute live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. And yeah, I'm just so glad that you can be here. I have my chat room open, and if anybody wants to sit in there, you're welcome to. And I thought today we'd talk about self-injury and also like self-sabotage as adult survivors of child abuse. It's I don't know how common it is, but I know that it does happen, and that people do self-injure and also self-sabotage. And I do know a lot about self-sabotage, but just personally. But this is one child abuse survivor to another, and I thank you for joining me. So that's what we're going to talk about today, and I have the websites and everything for you. And I'm not a professional. I don't hold any professional counseling certificates or therapy certificates. I'm just a person who just sits on Blog Talk Radio. I pay to do my own show because I think that we need to talk about this stuff. This is so important. There's so many people out there who are suffering and have been suffering for so many years after surviving child abuse, right? It's so hard for people, and a lot of times there's no one to connect with, and if you don't know, like if you really just haven't found a group of people to support you, it's just very sad to be just sort of suffering alone and in silence, right? And so I thought, well, I'll just be one more person out there just to talk about this stuff and get it out into the open. It doesn't bother me to talk about abuse because I've lived with it my whole life and come to terms with it, and just realize that it doesn't make me any lesser of a person. It doesn't make me any better of a person. It's just something that I went through, and then I thought, well, why not help people if you can, and just be one more voice out there just to share resources and information, and also just to talk about abuse, because it's not talked about. The mainstream society doesn't want to talk about it. They don't want to hear about it. They probably wish it would go away. We all wish it would go away, but that means to stop. You know what I mean? Stop child abuse, right? No one wants to see this happening to children, I'm sure, except for the abusers who are so sick. You know what I mean? There's something wrong with them, but most normal people don't want to see child abuse happening. But the thing is, mainstream society doesn't want to talk about it because it's so uncomfortable. And we really have to start getting comfortable talking about it because it's a real problem. I was reading some of the statistics not too long ago on one of my shows on the child abuse prevention and human rights abuse prevention is up to us. It was last week. And it's ridiculous, the amount of people that are suffering, and have suffered from child abuse of all types, right? Whether it's sexual, verbal, emotional, physical, psychological, you name it. There's, I forget how many millions of survivors just in the United States alone. And that was just at the time that those statistics were done. So now, of course, the number has changed, and it's just absolutely horrible what we see going on out there in the paper. But nobody's talking about it. Nobody's talking about how to prevent it. Nobody wants to talk about what happens to children when they're abused and what they have to go through after the aftermath of the abuse, trying to recover and trying to learn how to cope. No one wants to talk about the cycle of abuse, which is such a huge problem. So that's why I'm doing this show. So if you're sensitive to the topics of abuse, just turn the show off. You won't be hurting my feelings. It's all about promoting awareness, education, and prevention of child abuse, right? And also for adult survivors to know that we're not alone, and there is help out there. There's hope, And if you're a young person under the age of 18, I just ask that you have someone listen to the show with you, because then they can help you make the decision whether you should be listening to it or not. I'm just not sure where the Blog Talk players are now, because people, you can grab those players and put them on any website. So I don't know where the players are. So if you're a young person under the age of 18, I ask that you have someone listen to the show, even an archive, just so that they can listen to it and make sure that it's okay for you to listen to, and really that you should have someone know what you're doing online, because there's millions upon millions of child sexual predators online at any time. Just check out the FBI's website. The FBI has a great website regarding internet safety, and they are working around the clock trying to bust these people and trying to stop child sexual predators from being online, but it's very hard, and they have their job cut out for them because there's millions of them online at any given time, child sexual predators, and they will do anything to get a hold of you and your information and whatever they can get from you. So you keep yourself safe, and you let an adult know what you are doing online, and never give out any personal information. Use a false name online when you're in the chat rooms. Don't give anybody your real name or your address, your telephone numbers, what school you go to, nothing like that, because you don't know who these people are. And they could say they're a 12-year-old or 14-year-old or 16-year-old teenager who lives in some town, and then you find out that they are, in fact, an adult child sexual predator just out there looking for whoever they can get a hold of. So you want to keep yourself safe. That's the biggest thing, right? So we'll get right on with this information here. I wanted to look at this website. It's called Safe Alternatives, and it's www.safe, S-A-F-E, hyphen alternatives, just like it sounds, ALTERNATIVES.com. That's safealternatives.com. And this website's really awesome. This is for people who have, not even necessarily child abuse survivors, but people who self-injure for whatever reason that they do it. You know what I mean? It's not always related to child abuse, but I know that people who have suffered it with child abuse sometimes do self-injure. And so, it can happen. And that's why I thought we'd take a look at it, because I know myself, I have a tendency to self-sabotage my life, not thinking clearly, quitting jobs, getting mad if someone says something to me, and not thinking clearly about what was being said, and then feeling persecuted and just quitting. And I have a tendency to do stuff like that. I've left people in a space of 3 hours. I moved out of an apartment completely. That means everything shut off, electricity. I was so organized and so moved so fast that I was gone in 3 hours, and this, you would have never known I was even there. So that's the whole issue. I have a tendency to make really snap decisions without thinking clearly what the other person's motive was, what my motive was, and then make these really sort of life-altering decisions, and then later on wish that I wouldn't have done that and actually handled it differently. So I'm starting to learn as I get older what to look for. And, if I'm motivated to do something drastic in my life, then I have to think about what's causing me to be this way. What happened to cause me to feel the way that I do, and then take a look at why I'm doing what I'm doing. Is it motivated because I was abused as a child and maybe I need to sit back and think this through clearly, or is it just something else? So that's the whole issue, right? It's so hard to, if you grew up, in a destructive home and a very violent home and with abuse of different types, we tend to want to protect ourselves, and we almost sometimes overprotect ourselves in that area. And I think that's a lot of self-sabotage. That's where that can happen, because we're just trying to always protect ourselves, and we'll do just about anything to do that, right? And sometimes we just need to sit back and relax. And, people aren't necessarily always out to get us, but we do have to be careful to not be re-victimized, right? So important. And then other times, in my life, I wanted to self-injure, which is, cutting or hurting myself in some way, right? And I used to do that as a teenager, but it was because I was trying to just destroy myself, because my parents were destroying the family, and they were also destroying us as children, right? And every type of abuse you can think of, really, mainly physical and verbal, psychological, spiritual abuse, and I used to do crazy things, to try to hurt myself. And I actually used to try to break my bones, But I had a friend doing that also as well, and she grew up in an abusive home as well. And the two of us used to just go around trying to hurt ourselves, And we'd already suffered enough, But we were just on a collision course with, on a bad path, And I didn't care if my life ended or not at that time. I don't think I was necessarily trying to kill myself, but I was doing a lot of drugs and really harming my body, and I was not, because I wanted to finish the job for my parents, right? And so that was what it was in my mind. I thought in my mind, I was just a young teenager, and I thought, hey, if they want to destroy my body and destroy me, I'll just do it for them, right? So that was the mentality behind that. And that's horrible, right? And you see teenagers doing stuff like that, and you just think, what are their home lives like? A lot of people think, oh, what's the matter with those young people? Why can't they just straighten up and get a life and, Why can't they just be like other teenagers and do something to help themselves out? And you have to wonder, like, what is going on in their home life to cause them to be like that? Quite often there's abuse and serious abuse, right? So that's the whole issue. We can't judge people because of that stuff, right? It's people do what they do usually for a reason. We're motivated to do something because something causes us to do it, right? So that's the whole issue. And as an adult, I wanted to sort of, wasn't necessarily going to commit suicide, but I was certainly thinking about it. And I just wanted to be out of the pain and just wanted to be out of this body, And then about 3 years ago, actually 3 years really to the day, pretty much to the day, I was just sitting on the couch and thinking I would self-injure, and I wanted to gouge myself, because I wanted to show the world the pain I was in. And I thought, man, better off I'm just not here. I started having those feelings again, those like suicidal thoughts and whatnot. And then I got mad because I'm like, well, nobody's going to care. I sat back on the couch. I stopped myself from doing it, actually. And sat back on the couch and I thought, no one is going to care at all if I kill myself or if I hurt myself. I can gouge myself all I want, and the only person that's going to be feeling any effects from it is me. And the rest of the world is not going to care. They won't know. They won't care. My own family will not care. So why am I doing this? And I sat there and I got mad, and I'm like, yeah, this is ridiculous. If I do this, then my parents win. And they are not going to win this fight. I am fighting this one to the end. And I thought, no way. And then I got mad. I was really angry. And I just thought, why am I doing this to myself? I've already had enough, abuse in my life, right? So this is the whole issue. Self-injury and stuff like that for some survivors, it could be sort of semi-related to that, but not always. And that's why I want to take a look at this website, www.safealternatives.com, safe-alternatives.com. And what it is SAFE is SAFE is SAFE, self-abuse finally ends. So that's why they called it that. And if you go onto that website, you can see they have numbers here like 1-800-DON'T-CUT. Which is 1-800-366-8282. Now, I haven't tried to phone that number, so I don't know if it's a good number or not. But they have info at selfinjury.com if you want to send them an email. They have a safe blog on there, webinars, news and updates, resources, journal articles and books, facts, interviews, and referrals and lectures and whatnot. So there's all kinds of good information on there for people who self-injure. And, I over the years have known lots of people who self-injured. And even, in my life today, know people that self-injure. And me, I self-sabotage. So, this is the whole thing. And I don't even think I do it on purpose. I just do it because it's a trained way of being. It's sort of, it's a learned behavior, you know what I mean? So that's why I'm trying to learn how to correct it. And but if we don't know that there's ways and we can learn to cope, and we can learn to deal with this stuff, then how are we going to know how to stop, right? So they said here, I want to look at the facts section. It says, how does one determine whether they need professional help or not when it comes to self-abuse? It says, it is our opinion at Safe Alternatives that anyone who is injuring could benefit from a professional evaluation. Research shows that even those who have injured only once have a higher level of emotional distress, and a professional can help the client to identify the source of that stress and learn to cope in healthier ways. It is our belief that self-injury doesn't work for healthy people. That is, rather than providing a sense of relief, it merely hurts. And so that's what they had to say there about that. They said here, how difficult is it for someone to stop repetitive self-injurious behavior, and why? And they wrote here, although people can and do get better on their own, many find it incredibly difficult to stop the behavior as it provides an immediate sense of relief. In addition, self-injury is not the actual problem, but rather an attempt to soothe uncomfortable emotional states that underlie the behavior. And then they said here, what is the most common treatment for self-injury? The standard treatment for self-injury involves focusing on emotional regulation through skills training. Clients are taught to pay attention to the irrational thoughts they might serve to fuel intensive feeling states. That might serve. So it says clients are taught to pay attention to the irrational thoughts that might serve to fuel intensive feeling states. They are also taught to focus on the present rather than the past. And besides the most common are more alternative methods of treatment. Are there more alternative methods of treatment? It says yes. For example, while the safe alternatives model also focuses on irrational thinking, it also takes on account early childhood experiences, family systems, and rational difficulties. And they said here, when you speak of treating self-harm, are you talking about curing it, ending it forever, or is it more like an addiction or many of the psychiatric illnesses where the patient manages the behavior over a long term? And they wrote here, while some of our clients have been diagnosed with psychiatric disorders which may need to be managed over their lifetime, we do not view the behavior of self-injury as an addiction. It is our belief that once a client resolves underlying issues and learns to tolerate uncomfortable feelings rather than attempting to stuff them, self-injury becomes unnecessary. It is also our experience that when a client gets healthier, self-injury becomes painful rather than helpful. And so that's quite interesting, because I know like what they're saying there is like they don't feel it's like it's an addiction, and that if the problem was resolved, all the underlying issues were resolved for this person, like whether, no matter what those issues are, and they learn to tolerate the uncomfortable feelings rather than attempting to stuff them or to make themselves feel better by self-injury, right? Then the self-injury becomes unnecessary. And I think that's what happened to me at that point. I was just so tired of being in pain and in misery, and I thought, why am I doing this to myself? I'm going to cause myself more injury and more pain, and no one's going to even care, and I'll be doing this for no reason, absolutely no reason at all. But I know that sometimes people self-injure so they can feel, and maybe at that point that's what that whole issue was with me, is just so I could let some of this stuff out, And I'm glad that I didn't go through with it, because I would have seriously hurt myself. And that's the whole issue, right? It's better to find ways to cope, than to continue to harm ourselves and to ruin our lives even further than they already have been. That's what my big thing. I started to realize, I thought, man, no one's going to care. It won't matter to the world if I kill myself and move on from this world. And I thought, why am I doing this? I could be doing something way more proactive and try to help people and try to make a difference in this world and stop abuse, the type of abuse that happened to me, which is child abuse. And I thought, why am I not doing something to help people instead of sitting here trying to hurt myself even further than I've already been hurt in my lifetime? And I think that's what made me mad, that my parents had done what they had done, and that no one would care. I didn't have any friends at the time because they all dumped me or I dumped them, one or the other. And I was just sitting around by myself, and I thought, no one's going to care. It's like my brother committed suicide, and he had tried many times before, slicing his wrists one time, and who knows how many actual times he tried, but he was saved anyway. And then he finally managed to do it, and took his life at the age of 33. And he was a cocaine addict, but he was all of my siblings were abused as I was, and we all grew up in a horrible, horrible home with two people who were awesome people on their own. Had my parents never gotten together, they would have been probably perfectly fine, but I'd like to think that anyway. But it was the mix. It was just a really bad mix, and they both had a lot of emotional problems, psychological problems, and anger management problems. And together they were just one big abusing machine to each other and to the family, right? So they both worked against each other steady, and all of us suffered at both of their hands separately. And it was just ridiculous and horrible. And so my brothers took the worst of it, really, and they're gone. One committed suicide. The other one died of a drug overdose years later in a shelter here in Calgary. And nobody cared really that they were gone. People cried a few tears, but that was about it. And it's like no one talks about them in my family. There's not very many people left in my family now. We're pretty much all gone now, but there's a few of us left, and the ones that are left don't talk about them. Their names are not even mentioned, And that's why I feel like it's so important that people don't hurt themselves and that they go on to have a good life, because no one will care, probably, you know what I mean? A lot of times people self-injure thinking, well, if someone could just see the pain in my heart, or someone could feel what I'm feeling, right? That's what I was feeling when I wanted to self-injure and kind of was thinking about killing myself, I wanted someone to see what pain I was in and to feel what I was feeling, you know what I mean? But people just can't do that. You know what I mean? But we can get help, and we can find people who can support us. And that's why I say, it's so important to get into like whatever treatment or whatever form of therapy that we think is good for us. Like a group support if you just don't trust the one-on-one thing, which that was me. So that's why I like group support, because I just don't trust one-on-one situation with anybody, really, with any adult, or as far as somebody being an authority, I have a bit of a problem with that. And, I'll get into a relationship. I'll enter into relationships that I have to. I work and I'm out in the public, and but it doesn't necessarily mean I trust these people. You know what I mean? I'm just giving them the benefit of the doubt. But there is a lot of problems with trust and stuff, and especially with therapy and stuff. But it's so important to get help, right? And there is all kinds of support for people out there with problems and with different types of problems. It doesn't have to be a therapist. You can get on group support, online group support. You can go on with an anonymous name, so that no one will know that your real name. And then you can find out that there's lots of people out there who have experienced the same things, pretty much, maybe just a little different, but that they understand, where you're coming from, and that they want like the best for you and and for me, because they're trying so hard to make it as well, right? And they've probably come so far, right, in their healing process. And that's why I say, if it's just so important to know that this stuff is out there and it's available. And we quite often have to make that first step, and then say, well, I'm gonna just get out there and look around and see what I can find, and maybe get into one of these support groups. You know what I mean? That's what I did, and I never would have done that years ago. No way. But just within the last, I'd say, 6 months or so. Well, actually, no, it's more like 7 now. It just, my life has really changed for the better, because I started to reach out. And as soon as I started reaching out, that's when all these hands started reaching back to me, and I realized, hey, look at all these people. These people actually care. They care way more than my family does. You know what I mean? Like, they really care. My family doesn't really care at all. But my family is very dysfunctional, right? So they can't care because they're so dysfunctional that they don't understand really anything, right? So it's unfortunate. But I thought, hey, I look at all these people. So now, I'm surrounded by people who have been through, far times worse than I've been through, and who are reaching their hands out to me saying, you can do it. You know what I mean? You can make it. We know you can. And I look at them and I think, man, look at those guys. They're making it, And then I like to be a comforting person too, right? So I like to be there for people if they need to chat or just want to have someone's shoulder to cry on, or just want to vent. I don't even mind. I like to be there for people. You know what I mean? Because if you grew up around people who weren't there for you, it's nice to have some people in your life who are actually there for you. So that's the thing. It's so important to just make sure you get help, no matter what kind of help it is. I used to be so paranoid about getting help and actually thinking about getting a therapist. And right now, like, if I had the money, I'd go get a counselor and find out, just if there is an area in my life that I could help to make better for myself. You know what I mean? Self-image, or I'm feeling a little better than I used to. That's for sure. I used to have a horrible self-image, but it's self-worthlessness and whatnot. But there's help out there. So that's the whole issue, right? Now, I'll just keep reading here. Let's finish this article. It says, is self-help alone a realistically effective tool in recovery from self-injury? It says some people have gotten better with self-help. This means they have stopped injuring on their own. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have resolved the issues that underlie the behavior. And sometimes these people are at risk for switching to another coping strategy, such as drugs, alcohol, or an eating disorder. So you just change one for the other, right? Which none of them are really good. So, that's the whole issue, right? It's just like me with smoking, cigarettes, right? I'm trying to quit, but it's my crutch. And so right now I feel like I really just need to smoke. Unfortunately, I quit for 14 months. I went without a cigarette for 14 months after smoking since I was like 12 years old. And I thought, hey, that's great. I was so happy and I felt really good. And then all of a sudden, last winter or December, I decided that I needed a pack of cigarettes because I was stressed out. And I thought, I'll be able to quit again, and I will be because I'm going to. But the thing is I'm just using them as a crutch, and I think, that's the areas in my life that I still need to work on. something pushed me to not be able to cope and reach for those cigarettes. And that's what I need to take a look at and face and really work through. And it's all to do with the sexual molestation that I suffered as a child, right? I started to think about it, and also my sweetheart's terminally ill, and he was very kind of going downhill around Christmas time, actually Christmas Eve again. He always gets sick around Christmas and Easter, and it's kind of every 6 months sort of thing. And I thought, I was worried about him, and I was thinking I might have to call the coroner because he wasn't looking very good, because he's been terminally ill for 9 years, but he's just doing really well and hanging in there. But these are the things that can cause us to go back into old habits, right? And I had quit smoking, and I was doing great, and was fighting it. You know what I mean? I was feeling pretty comfortable with fighting it every day. Just realizing that I didn't need to smoke. I could even be around smokers, and it wasn't bothering me. And then all of a sudden, I bought a pack of cigarettes, and there you go. So now I'm smoking again. So now I have to quit again. But this is the thing, right? It's so easy to fall back on these old behaviors and old things due to stress. So that's the areas that we know we need to work on, right? It's good to have support to do it, and that's why this show is kind of like therapy for me, because I get to read all this stuff and learn about it and share it. I kept silent for so many years. I did tell a few people about my past, and usually I would lose those people as soon as I told them anything about my past. We'd be friends for a while, whoever these people would be, and then eventually, after they would hear so much, they would just be like, "Oh, this is just too much. You're just too wounded," or, I can't deal with you. And of course, I got rid of some people because I didn't trust them. So, I just didn't like the way they were treating me, and I don't take abuse off of anyone. And so if I think someone's going to be abusive to me, even as a friend, I'll just dump them, right? And so now I have to learn how to give people a chance. Nobody's perfect, and including myself. And so I want people to trust me, so I have to learn how to trust them. And but I do definitely use my gut instinct, that's for sure. Let's see here. They said here, Safe Alternatives opened its doors in 1985. That's over 20 years. Yet there are still relatively few therapists in the U.S. who know how to treat it. Why is that? It's as self-injury used to be an obscure psychiatric symptom. Most therapists didn't even think they would be treating clients who engaged in these behaviors. The escalation of these behaviors has been so rapid that school, hospital, criminal justice, and mental health professionals have been caught off guard without the appropriate resources. And so they go on to say, how does one go about finding a therapist who specializes in treating self-injury, and what credentials should a prospective patient ask about? We have a list of therapists from a variety of states, they said here, who have expressed an interest in working with self-injurers. In general, they have also received some training in working with this population. While we cannot endorse each of these therapists, it is a place for some clients to start. And we welcome any feedback regarding client experiences with the therapist listed on our website. In addition, on our website, you will also find helpful information on how to find a therapist. And we would suggest finding a psychiatric professional who is at least master's prepared as a psychologist, social worker, or counselor, and is licensed in your state. Psychiatrists can help with medication evaluations, and some also do therapy. So that's what they wrote here. And this is a great article, and it just goes on and on talking about, what is the average cost of the program, and what is the rate of relapse, recurrence of a self-injury. What are the characteristics of someone who is likely to be more successful when it comes to achieving a positive outcome from treatment? So there's all kinds of great stuff here. We'll just continue on with this tomorrow morning. And yeah, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. And we'll be on tonight. Elizabeth Roberts-Brawley, the Southern Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, will be on hosting tonight on Dreamcatchers Talk Radio at www.blogtalkradio.com .com/Dreamcatchers, and I'll be co-hosting, and I hope you can tune in at 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time for an hour, and then I'll be on after that with my show, Child Abuse Prevention and Human Rights Abuse Prevention is Up to Us, shortly after. So, I hope you can tune in and check those shows out. And otherwise, have a great day, everybody. We'll be back on tomorrow, same time, tomorrow morning, 6 o'clock a.m. Mountain Standard Time, with one child abuse survivor to another. Have a great day, everybody. I'm just hoping that you will keep that hope alive, keep walking forward, and just keep walking at your own pace, slow and steady pace to wholeness and to healing, right? So important. and just keep reaching out, right? We do count, we do matter, and if no one's ever told you that before, I'm telling you now, you do count and you do matter, and you deserve to have a good life, and we all do, but we have to fight for it and we have to walk it out, and that's why you have to stay here and stay with us and keep that hope alive. So take care, everybody. Have a great day, and talk to you soon.